Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in if you are coming into the stream or if you are catching this in the VODs or on YouTube. Welcome to a Zeal stream. It's been a little bit since we've been at it, and I am glad you're here again with us to go on a new adventure. So it looks like today our camera's working. So that's good. Usually it goes on the fritz and it decides to be uh, a little weird. All right. So let's just get into it right away because we got a good jam-packed day today for us. Today the project that we're going to start working on is creating a package, a hex package, aka a package for Elixir, to provide a thin wrapper to the Notion API. Okay, the Notion API, what is that? Let's just do a quick search over here, and if we go to developers.notion.com, Notion, a kind of all-in-one application that does markdown and organization. It does a lot of different things, but it is like it's similar to OneNote, and and other type of like note-taking apps that do a lot of other stuff like data, um, photos, videos, internal wikis. It does a lot of different things. And recently, probably now a month or two, they went into a public beta period. I believe you still have to sign up, but they have released a beta version of their API so that you can programmatically access pages on your Notion site, on your Notion workspace, or manipulate data, putting in data into your Notion page or your database. And it leads to very interesting interactions. So I've already done a little bit of an implementation with my own personal site for my stream closed captioner site. That integration is actually under the announcements page. So this right here, this page is actually utilizing the Notion API to fetch information from a Notion page, a Notion database, more specifically, and using that to display it on this site. And from there, if you click on one of these titles, it links you to that page. So in this situation, it's a page, it's an article that I have written with a video embed. But what that Notion page, what this announcements page is doing, it is doing an API request to get information from a Notion database, which is just a collection of data, list, a table. It is doing a request to get information about that table of the latest items in that table and listing them on my site. So we're kind of doing pseudo CMS, aka content management system, taking our Notion page, querying for it, displaying it beautifully on our site. And then if people are curious about reading more, they go and click on it and it takes them to the latest article. And this is written in Elixir. So the whole website's written in Elixir. And I've already kind of implemented some of the code within my site. And I would like to extract that work. Let's put it in a package and let anyone use the code. And potentially anyone open source it and let anyone use the code, let anyone iterate on it if they want to add more features to it. But we're going to try to do a very thin wrapper that we can just get information from Notion. Maybe we can put some information in Notion, but let's see how far we can get in the next hour or so about doing it for doing that. All right. So let's get started then. All right. So first things first is we need to start with creating a package, a library that we need to generate something. So I went ahead. So I'm still new at doing this part of Elixir stuff. So I went directly to the Elixir website, the docs, and I was curious. I'm like, Elixir's great at documenting everything. Let's see if they have some documentation on building a library, a package. So I went to the Elixir standard library, and I went to pages. So pages usually has some nice guides in here. And under pages, let me move my camera. There is a library guidelines. So if we go to that, This actually has documentation, outlines general guidelines, anti-patterns, and rules for those writing and publishing Elixir libraries meant to be consumed by other developers. So, good start. All right. So I looked this up, I found it, and luckily it has a pretty good guide on all sorts of different aspects of developing an Elixir library package. So let's go about doing it. So I already have my terminal open, ready to go, and let's create our library. So what I've been thinking about what to call this. So I think I'm going to call this Thin Notion. And actually, let's look at the naming convention. So where your project names are given snake case convention, where all letters are lowercase and words are separated with underscore. So Thin Notion API. So that's what I'm just going to call it that. And let's go ahead and generate that code. So what happened here? Looks like we got, so it generated our Thin Notion API. It created readme, get ignore, mixexs, lib, and our base structure for all our stuff. So now it says, all right, let's cd into Thin Notion API and run a mix test, and we have our very first test is already passing. Nice. All right, but let's actually take a look at what's going on in the code. So let's go ahead and open this up in VS Code. Get started here. All right. So yeah, we have our README going for us. We have instructions for installation for our package. So we already have like a little bit of scaffolding going on for us. Very nice. Mixexs, Thin Notion API, and any dependencies we might need. And our generated code. So here is our module, root module for our Thin Notion API with a just filler hello world definition. And we have our test and test helpers. So we have our example hello world, and this is testing whether hello world will actually work. And let's see if it's actually going to work. That passes. That passes. So I have a nice and nifty little plugin called testing, and it provides like an easy interface to run your Elixir tests, other tests like JavaScript tests, Ruby tests, or RSpec tests, and VS Code. So that's what we're using. But if we were not using this handy dandy, it's not like Wallaby. It is not like Wallaby. Wallaby is Wallaby its own thing. This is just a simple plugin. It just basically runs mixed test directly in the command line. But welcome back, 83, Inking 83. Thanks for stopping by. So let's see if we can actually pull up the test runner in here. Let's see, can we find it in here? Test Explorer, this is it right here. Let's see, is there any output? Doesn't show any output there. Let's see. So it's not showing any output, but if it failed, we'd be able to see some output. Yeah. So this is a library called Test Explorer, and there's several. So Test Explorer itself is a plugin for VS Code that's agnostic. It just runs tests. What you need to do then next is install the corresponding test explorer for the language or library you're using. So in this case, I had installed a test explorer for Elixir. And let's see if it'll come up in our quick little search here. Yeah, Elixir test. And is this it? This might not be it. This is just a jump at that one. I was about to say that's not the right name for this. Elixir Test Explorer. So this is it. So it's a plugin directly for Test Explorer. If you were doing JavaScript like just tests, you would do just. There's a Test Explorer for RSpec, like I was mentioning before. So pick your flavor of language. See if someone's already implemented a Test Explorer for it, so you can run your tests on VS Code. Nice, you found it. Awesome. So yeah, a very simple thing to do. But if we weren't using Test Explorer and you were just in the project, we would just typically just run mix test. And if you ever forget what command to run tests with, we can always go into mix exs. Let's see. Is it in mix exs, or am I just thinking about regular old Elixir Phoenix projects? I guess it's just native. Forget what I said. All right, so we have our simple, our very simple module going on here. And the next thing we do is, let's start bringing over the code I've already written before for Notion. So let's talk about, let's show the code of what I've already written in my existing string closed captioner library, and we'll talk about what the Notion API does. So let's just ahead of time go to the documentation. So documentation is really nice, first of all, and we'll kind of cover setup of what to do. And let's go to actual string closed captioner source code. So it should be under lib, string closed captioner Phoenix, and I should have services. Trying to see if there's any defining here. No. So under services, I have a Notion module in here, which is just Notion. And let's go ahead and documentation for Notion API. A thin wrapper for the Notion API. So here's our very simple module for Notion. All the meat and potatoes of that is actually going to be in the Notion folder for the different aspects of this. So there are different objects representations in Notion. So after you kind of look at the documentation, sign up, there's two. So let's take a look at the API references. There are a couple main concepts in the Notion API. There are databases, pages, blocks, and user objects. So I can't do, therefore. I was trying to do something weird with my fingers before. And so I'll go down the line here, and this is a RESTful API. So we're going to be do standard gets, posts, patches to fetch information. So let's go into a little explanation again of what the different components of a Notion doc is. So if we go back over here to deploying Elixir, let's take a look at this page first. So this is a database page. So there are pages where are blank slates of information. So in our situation, this right here is a page. It's just a linear kind of object that just has text and videos, photos, whatever you want it to be. There's nothing else really complex to it. This is a page. And then a page can have items like attributes, properties to a page. So you can add properties to this. So for the properties for these pages, I have published and a TLDR. And I'll get into information why these properties exist. Hopefully we can get to it today, but I'll talk about why I did this, why I have these properties, because they're very important. Okay. And then on this page right here, this whole thing's actually a database. So it doesn't look like a database right now because of the view we have this in. But if I change this view to a table view, now this looks more like a database. We have individual rows with different properties on them. And then these pages, these items in a database have our properties and then content inside of them. So this is a database. So those are the two main things you'll be interfacing with. Notion is database, which is a list of items with different properties in them, and then a page object. And a page object could have properties set on that page, which would be that could be defined from a database too. Blocks are the individual elements of a page. So when we go inside of a page, this right here, this whole thing, this video is a block. This section of code right here is another block. So there's different type of blocks on here. Hey, Argus. All right, so that is the pages portion of it and blocks of it. And then user object is a little hopefully is a little self-explanatory, but it's just users that are in Notion. So that's a little bit background of the different aspects of the Notion API. Now let's get over to the code I had already written ahead of time, or written when I was trying to build out my Notion integration for my site to drive grabbing the data from this database. So let's remove that from this database with items in it and get it to show that data as announcements here. So going from whatever's in here to displaying on my site right here. All right. So I had built, so let's look at database. So the database right now is very simple because I'm not concerned about posting. So this is what I have written so far for database. Just retrieve database. So I tried to mirror this up to what the Notion API has. So we have retrieve database. And retrieve database is just a GET request to fetch information from a database. You need to know the database ID, and it's basically a GET for a database. If we know the ID of the database, we can go and fetch its information, and it returns back a JSON blob of stuff. And in the code over here, There's also the query database, and that is in charge of getting a list. That is in charge of getting information out of a database. Gets a list of pages contained in the database, filtered and ordered according to filter conditions and criteria provided in the request. So it would be the equivalent of going into this database and adjusting filters to, filter out certain aspects. In this case, this database is sorted by published out descending, so we can get the latest item published here. So it'd be the equivalent of doing like spreadsheets, sorting so when we're querying for a database, we can specify filters, sorts, and it's paginated, so we can paginate through and grab all the items from the database. So these are very thin. So it's like, okay, well, this is not a lot of code to retrieve information from the database. It just says get and then that. So why is this so thin? It gets an ID and then it just gets it. Why is this so thin? Why is that? What's going on here? And that's because I've extracted out ahead of time a base implementation that contains our Notion base that contains simple, already kind of boilerplate get and post requests cycle helper methods. Because in the end, we're just doing, this is a thin API. I'm intending this to be a very thin API. So I don't want to really do anything with the data that's returned back from Notion. I just want to, this wrapper just wants to help you request information from Notion and give it to you back. Not going to parse it, not going to like try to like do any transforms of it or anything like that. Just get the information, bring it back. And so, and with standard RESTful type of requests, you're just doing a get request. You have to specify the credentials and get it back. So that is a very straightforward operation. So some of this code's already been extracted out to get and post, where the get takes arguments, any queries, builds a URL, does a request via HTTP poison, and parses it using a parser helper that is also defined, which is over yonder. And this parser is actually kind of boilerplate HTTP poison handling of different status codes. But that's enough talking. That's definitely enough talking. Let's get to coding this stuff. So if we're going to be doing this stuff, we need to first get some dependencies in here and doing requests. So we've already been using HTTP poison, so let's go get HTTP poison. HTTP poison. I always include the extra P, but it's only one specific P. Apparently I can't spell it, so we're just gonna do this. So here's HTTP poison. And where is the thingamabobber to tell us how to the hex thing? Hypertext transfer poison. Yeah, exactly. Hypertext transfer poison. That's exactly what it is. There we go. That's our little code here. I want to make sure to get it right because I don't want to assume that that's just the name of it. So we're going to grab our dependency and we're going to introduce our very first dependency for this project. HTTP TT poison. And now let's just make sure, even though we have a tool that automatically does mix deps get, let's just make sure and be thorough and actually fetch our dependency for HT poison. Good. Awesome. Stupendous. So next is we have our dependency in there. Let's start trying to actually get our getting our information. So the first objective will be to try to query, and let's go ahead and create a brand new workspace to fetch information from. How about we can try to just grab from an existing workspace too. Let's grab it from private. So we're going to create a new private workspace here, and we're going to say then Notion example test workspace. So that is our workspace. Let's actually make this public. It doesn't matter. And let's add in let's make this a database. So test. So let's get some example stuff going in here. Test database in here. All right. Now, in order to use the test the Notion API, we need to create an integration. So I already have a couple integrations that I was playing with. Let's create a brand new one for us. And this is then Notion API. So you can, there's the ability to create like private integrations and public integrations if you have a public application. This will be designed around that idea of you making your own private integration for your own tooling. So the Notion API is the name of our integration. Our associated workspace is going to be select a workspace to install the integration. And let's just double check whether our integration, so our overall workspace is the main, is this one. And then we have a page in that workspace. So we submit that. And then we're given a secret token to authenticate against our APIs. So if we go to the documentation, we go to the API guide, and let's just look at retrieve database. All Notion APIs require an authorization header. So for all Notion APIs, we have to specify authorization, bearer, and that special token. So if you are creating an integration, make sure to never share this token with anyone, because they'll be able to make requests all they want to anything you gave that this application has access to. We'll get to that in a minute. So internal integration, public integration. So we're going to be working on an internal integration. So let's save that. And I believe that should be it. Even though there's not much in the way of confirmation, we should have our thin Notion API. There we go. So let's get into things a little bit further. All right. So let's take our existing, too easy. There's going to be a little bit of gotcha we're going to cover in a minute or two. So our main goal is, let's just try to, well, the first goal we'll try to do is to retrieve a database. That's going to be our goal for today. We can go a little bit further than that, and that's awesome. So let's try to retrieve a database. So I'm going to go ahead and take this Notion boilerplate we already have here. And in our lib, let's create a new folder called thin Notion API. So this is our module folder that's going to contain all our thin Notion API modules to allow us to do stuff. And let's create a new file called base.ex. We're going to take out some stuff in here. So we're going to get rid of that because we're not doing anything with New Relic in here. And we have our thin, and it's not Notion, it's thin Notion API. We're not going to document this base file because it is just a tool for us to use for the actual stuff we want to document. So we're just say document false or doc false. And this is set up. We have a base URL to our API, notion.com/v1. How does that look? Is that correct? Still, it should be, but let's just double check. So let's go to our retrieve database, and all our URLs are going to have the same base URL, which is https API notion.com/v1, and that should be the same across the board. Yeah, let's just make sure that holds true for everything. Users and search. So we have the same base URL. So that's good. We have this very generic get where we take in our path argument, which would be the additional args on the side right here. We build a URL. What does build URL do? It takes in our path arg, it takes in some query parameters, and then it will process our parameters. So what this does is it's converting our parameters. It is formatting our parameters into a map to make it compatible with HTTP poison. And then we construct this URL. Yeah, so we construct this to a map that's compatible with query parameters. And then we construct this URL with our base, our path, and then the encoded parameters. Because since this is going to be doing a get request for the additional information, can potentially have additional arguments to them. So like if we're querying for a database, we would be adding additional attributes, path attributes to the end of the URL potentially. And post does something very similar. The difference is a post has a data body, so we get passed in a body, we encode that using JSON, which is going to be another library we need. So let's go grab that. Let's look that up. Elixir JSON. And there we go. There's our documentation. 1.2. Yep. We are on 1.2. And that's still in alphabetical order. Awesome. Let's do our due diligence and just make sure we did a mixed step skip. We have JSON now. So now we do that. We build our URL. We perform a post request, and we're missing some other important information here. So this is just doing a generic get request with a path URL. We need the parser lib that will parse our response. So after doing a get or a post, it will parse our response. And again, this parse response file was actually some boilerplate I had gotten from uh, looking around at other open source libraries on how they handle response parsing. And I found this, and I thought this was a beautiful little module to help with handling a response if you know what the response does. See, this is actually incorrect. This should be Notion.api like that. Okay. And this one is just does the beautiful pattern matching from Elixir to pattern match whether on an OK on 200 or 201 or other type of statuses we want to say that a response was okay and parsing the body. And it does pattern matching in case HTTP poison returns back an error, or it responds back with basically if it doesn't have the status codes we want here or an okay response, then we treat that as an error and parse the rest. So this is just a very clean kind of boilerplate way of handling parsing responses for HTTP poison. Yeah, in a very generic way. So I really liked this, so I borrowed it. Hey, madam, hiring. Yes. We are hiring awesome people. All right. So I copied this over, but we have a squiggly line still. It's awesome, people. I am pretty sure you're an awesome person. I mean, how can you not be an awesome person if you're hanging out here? Right? Hmm? Let me move the camera. I just realized the camera's kind of like blocking that section of the code of the commands. All right, so we got dependencies installed with mixed scat. We are doing a Notion. So we still need. So we're trying to import these NotionUtils. What is NotionUtils? Again, another thing. Another helper thing. Okay. So NotionUtils is an interesting type of thing. So if so let's get into this right now. So what I'm going to do here is comment let's remove some of this code here first, because I've already done a lot of the hard part for working with the Notion API. Parser, Notion, so then Notion API parser. So we have this thin Notion base. Let's try actually using this. So let's go ahead and try to compile our code and run it in IEX. So mix-s capital S IEX should get code running hopefully in our terminal, I think. Did I get this right? Or is it the other way around? Mix -x. I always forget this command to run this in here. But that's okay, because when I forget, I can always look up. Because it's okay to have little cheat sheets to help you along your way. Run library in IEX. It's the top one right there. I went dyslexic on this. It's IEX-S mix. That's what it was. Okay. So now we are in our interactive Elixir terminal, and let's try seeing if we can get this base working for us. So in order to access it, it is under thin Notion API base. So let's do thin, and then I can tab complete this beautifully base. So let's try utilizing this get request function. So get, what I want to do is I want to do a get request to query for a database. So as discussed earlier, when we just need the path to what part of the API we're going to be running. We already have the base for up to /v1. So if we were going to do a request, and let me pull this over so we can have a little bit of breathing room here. We want to do a request to v1 API database, or not v1, but database ID. Okay, so what is actually, we're going to retrieve a database, not that one, this one. Up to that. So databases, database ID. Okay, so what's the ID? So I had created this test database here from our little Notion page. For our new little Notion page has a test database. So what's the ID of the test database to look it up? It is here on the URL bar. This chunk of code right here is our database ID. That is our database ID. So let's go ahead and we just copy that in, like in this right here. Hopefully that's our database ID. Because I know formatting with Notion API is a little weird. So get databases, that, and then we should be able to do a request to it. So if we try that, we get an error coming back. It says undefined module poison is not available. Poison and decode. Function poison decode 1. So it errored out because it doesn't have access to HTTP poison. Invalid request decode object. So there's two things here that happened. One was it errored out when trying to do poison decode. The other thing is there's like something here. There's something else here. So we have some breaking code. What's going on? So let's close this thing right here so we can see more code. So what happened? It says, so Elixir comes with some wonderful error messaging. Define function, poison decode on line 24 of our parser. Go into here and we try to do this ParseResponse body. Okay. And then we try to do this poison decode. Oh. So looks like it doesn't have access to poison. So what is poison decode? Now let's take a look at our HTTP poison documentation, because it could just be something we forgot from the copy and paste. Let's see. Let's do a search for decode. There it is. You can also, wrapping HTTP poison, you can also use HTTP poison base module in your modules in order to make cool API clients for something. Or something. I love that. Or something. So poison is a special decoder for for Poison itself. So the example following wraps HTTP Poison base in order to build a client. Poison is used for JSON decoding. So yeah, like you said, this is some old code. Maybe we don't need to use this at all. Let's try to just use, because we have JSON, right? Or JSON. And JSON decode. So why don't we just use JSON? Or Argus or whatever. Exactly. I like your thinking. Let's try this again. Oh, I forgot. We have to reload our code. So if you're familiar with Ruby Rails with the Rails console, you can typically do like a reload to reload the code. That doesn't exist, the reload command, but you still can reload your code in Elixir. You can either do the R, I believe. I forget what it is to do everything, but you can just do R, and then this should work where we want to reload a specific module. So then Notion API, we change the parser. So parser, and if you wrap it with R, it would do the thin Notion, it would do the reload of it. So then the next time you execute your code, it reloaded that code for us. So doing R, and then, you know, whatever module that you change the code in, call R on that, passing that into R, and I'll reload the module. So you don't have to exit IEX in order to start it up again. All right, so that worked. We got past that error. So now it's complaining about invalid request URL, invalid request URL. We got a 400. So also can just type in, that's it, recompile. Thank you. So you can just do recompile, and recompile will just do the whole thing. Yeah. Nope. Nope. All right, so why did that fail? Well, we were a little naive and we forgot to do some important stuff here. So when we do a request to Notion, I had talked about that we're going to need that secret. And we also need something else here. We need to add Notion version header. So Notion is doing, because the API is in beta and things can be in flux, they also require you to add in a version header for a specific date. So you can specify what version of Notion you want to use. So, which is kind of cool, because in the future, when they're going to implement like adjustments, potentially breaking changes, hopefully they honor like the date version that you specify. So if there's a newer version that has some breaking changes and it's still under the V1, you can just, it's locked down by the date range for, I guess, you know, to get around the whole, they can continue to do patch versions or minor version updates under the major version of V1. So we're missing a couple integral pieces to our request. So I intentionally commented out this NotionUtils in here. So I had written some code to handle that for us, or for me, or for whatever. And that is the NotionUtils. So let me bring this over. This is going to be called then NotionUtils. Then Notion API. And let's add this in here. So this is the utils. And let's copy that in, and we'll talk about what we see. So then Notion API. I'm bamboozled. So the Notion API utils is a series of methods that I actually got inspiration from a couple other open source packages. And they are the equivalent of getters for setting, getting and setting portions of the headers for our requests. There's a couple important things in here that it does. One thing is it gets the API key for our application. So application get env. So it grabs the application get environment variable and an API key. This needs to be thin. We need to rename this to thin Notion API. So it's namespaced to that, which is actually, if we take a look at the library guidelines down here under application configuration, they make sure to make a call out that if, well, they say, first of all, if, avoid application configuration using environment variables as much as possible. But if you do have to do it, then, you have to make sure to make the name unique so you don't have collisions with other applications. So in our situation, it is the name of our package is thin Notion API, so that's what we're going to do it. And we have right here application.getEnv will get the API key from the system, because we don't want to hard code anything. That's a major security no of hard coding things. And then Notion version also tries to get a Notion version in case I wanted to configure this to use a different Notion version. But if you don't specify one, it'll just default to what the current API this package expects, which is 2021 513. And then the other series of these util helpers does it constructs the different portions of the header for our requests. So for the auth header, it does the authorization bearer token, doing a concatenation with the API key. It does the same thing for the version header, Notion version, and then gets the Notion version and puts it in there, specifies our content header. And then there's these two other helper methods right here that actually just go and construct the full request header. In this case, this is Notion, the standard request header, which is just the version plus the auth header. And both of these are tuples. So it's a list containing tuples. And that's how, so HTTP poison, I'm going to say HTTP poison, when you're, this is something I learned the hard way, but for headers for the library, the easiest way to configure the headers is to give it a list of tuples containing the different header items. So that's what this is doing. Each header item is its own list with a single tuple in there with the key and the value. And it just takes those and concatenates them together, creating a larger list with the different headers. So the request header only requires the version header and the auth header. The post will require version header, auth header, and then I also included a content header since we're submitting data, which happens to be JSON. So that's what this utils method is doing. It's helping us out that way. So we import the utils here, and we want to utilize those utils. So actually, if I undo this, because I remember I've done some stuff here. So let's change this back. Then Notion API utils. Let's take this, grab this, put that there. There we go. So when we do a GET request, we grab the request headers. So I'm just doing a straight import for this because I just want those functions in this module here. So I'm just going to import them in as I'm just going to use them directly. So request headers, post request headers. So if I were to try to do that, so let's do recompile to recompile all the things because I just introduced a new file. I did some changes to base. Let's see if we can just do recompile, and then let's do another request. But we still get a 400. And that's because I forgot that I need to add the API key. Well, one thing I'm curious about is if we recompile, will it get the environment variable? Well, I guess we'll figure that out right now. So typically, so we're gonna be a little bit of risque with it with our secret keys and stuff like that today, and just to show example. And I'm just gonna go. We're just gonna work with the secret key that you can see because I'm gonna delete this application right after the stream or reset the secret. So yeah, you can't refresh this secret, by the way. So make sure you don't leak it. Okay. So what I'm going to do here for now is typically we would import this in via environment variable, but for the sake of time, we're going to default this to the secret here. All right, let's recompile. Now, can we actually do a request? No. So let's restart IEX because maybe it needs to load in the environment variables because since that was set at runtime, the start of the application. All right. And let's copy this. What the heck? Copy. And paste. Invalid URL. Interesting. What is going on? What is going on? Maybe we don't have the correct database URL ID here. Question mark? So it's still doing a 400. And let's check our documentation, API Notion databases. So we do that, cat's there, we do databases, and then we have that ID, the Notion database ID. What's that? Their database. It's not that. Let's see if we copy a link to this database, what it looks like. Let's get rid of this. So that takes us to our database. So that's correct. Database, da 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 da. Invalid request URL. All right, so now we have to figure out what the heck is going on because our invalid request URL is not happy. It's not happy at all. Databases. Database ID. Part of me feels like it's throwing a little hissy fit because of the dashes. Let's actually see in my example code for string closed captioner how we did the request to fetch a database in my code real quick. So web controller, and it is under announcements. Yeah, there's the so it's still that is a correct format for our code. Maybe our secret's incorrect. Okay. Maybe our secret's incorrect. Never know. That's good. There is the index request for the database. Yeah, so get index request. So that's what we're trying to do. Trying to do a get request, which is a get. So the index get database ID. So unless we're missing something, list databases too. Yeah. Yeah, let's try that. I like that idea. There's a get, there's a just a regular index. Let's try that. I remember now. So this is the confusion I had because I had forgotten a step in the integration. So I intentionally left this out because I wanted to struggle a little bit, and I completely forgot that I left this out for for this explicit reason. So when you are doing Notion, I got myself also. Even though you have an API, and even though you are the one that generated the app, the integration for it, that doesn't mean your app integration has access to any of your Notion stuff. You have to explicitly share that database with your integration. And that is part of step 2 here. So it's something you can easily forget about, especially after going through the tutorial, which I just forgot about in just a second ago. So this test database, we want Notion to have access to it, our Notion integration. So what we have to do is we have to click share, just like you would share with the person. And we have to invite. And from here, I can see my own integrations. So thin Notion API. We click on that. We click invite. Now our integration is invited to our database. Now, hopefully that will work because that was an important step I intentionally left out. So let's just reinitialize this and see what happens to see if that because that might not be our error, but that is something that's very important that I left out. So we still have a bad URL. So let's figure this out. And it could be the request headers that are causing issues in here. So we'll do piecemeal debugging here. So I am going to utilize, I believe it is tap in Elixir. Hopefully it's tap to help us kind of debug in the middle of what's being printed out per each step here. Hey Lily, how's it going? Long time no see. Hopefully you're doing well. And work has been pleasant for you. So we're going to go ahead and try to just inspect what we get back here. So we should be able to just straight up just do an IO inspect. Hopefully. Undefined method tap, isn't tap a kernel? Work has been something. I heard a place is hiring amazing people. You could say that they have a real zeal for it. I love that. I love that. I love that. I've been doing great. I have been doing great. I have been very busy learning Elixir, building stuff, enjoying work, having a lot of fun. That is for sure. So seriously, why does it? I'm confused here. Kernel is or tap is a kernel method. I should just have access to kernel methods, right? Right? Fine. We'll just call these individually. I'm not sure. I don't want to spend too much time dwelling on this. So then let's see what request header gives to us. Then Notion API dot utils dot request headers. There's our request headers. Again, we're throwing out the secret, so that's not a big deal. Then Notion API base build URL. Build URL is private. We made it private, so we don't have access to it explicitly. Got to hear. I've been lurking through a couple of your streams, but was watching on TV. I've been too lazy to type on grading. You can't. You at least on the TV, the Twitch app on my TV, you can't even type in Twitch chat anymore. You can only do emotes. I noticed that it seems like they removed it from at least from the television version of the application. They removed the ability to actually type anything. All you can do is emote. At least on my TV. So that's working. So that means that we're not properly constructing the query params properly. So let's take a look at this, because maybe our code is not correct, because you never know. Our code could be incorrect. The curse of copy pasta. The curse of the copy pasta. They're passed as no, actually, for HE poison, they can be passed as tuples. They don't have to be named. As long as they are a two item tuple, it's fine for and let's see. Actually, you bring up a good point for headers. For HE, so the second arguments in here for the list is headers. So that works. So you don't actually have to name headers if you're just passing it as to the get based off the documentation. So the binary, then a list of headers, and then the options. You've been too lazy to emote. Oh, tap was in 112. That explains things. I haven't updated the Elixir on my computer. I've been doing most of my Elixir development in Docker containers. So that explains why I don't have it all of a sudden, because all of my development for my Elixir application has been in Docker containers. This one's running on the system. So that explains a lot. Thanks, Matt, for helping out. Have a good one. Yeah, thanks everyone. Greatly appreciate it. Let's see. Oh, interesting. It doesn't want to recompile the new so let's try this again. Then Notion API base build. Doesn't seem to know about that. Then Notion API base build URL So if we were building a URL, it was going to be databases. Ah, there we go. Was it that extra slash? I think it was. It was your user error. So if we do databases get, there we go. Look at that. It actually fetched the databases. So there we go. Here's the ID to the database that we have access to, the one and only database we have access to. So if we were to take this to the next level, so Command C, Notion API get, and then if we do databases, that gives us our specific database. Okay, our specific database. We got it working. So Lily, tell me, what type of things have you, hopefully work's been well, and have you been doing anything interesting or been learning about anything interesting that you want to share? All right, we're close. Our goal is to at least get the database information. So the base works. We were able to just type in the URLs. Let's make it a little bit easier for somebody to actually retrieve a database now. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to create a new file here. And we're just going to call this databases. Database is, if I can spell correctly. So module def, thin, Notion, API, do, if I'm doing this correctly, get it? Databases. So def. So let's go to the documentation. We have at least 2 getter ones. So we'll implement both of these. And this is going to be fairly easy now. So let's do retrieve database. And this would be the ID. Let's see, let's go by the documentation. Database ID. Oh no, there we go. Oh, I didn't type that in. That's why the complete didn't happen. And we want to use our new special getters. So what I can do next is let's just straight import in the thin Notion API base. And then what we can do is just do a get. And retrieving a database requires us to do databases without the slash. That was the one mistake we've been making, is we've been including the slashes. And then it will be the ID. It's def module, not module def. I just realized that. All right. Let's I'm gonna make this private fp defp. And so let's recompile. Then Notion API database, and then there should be a retrieve database. I'm not sure if recompile will actually recognize new files. Is undefined. Okay. let's see, if I directly reference a brand new module, will it know about it? No. Okay, let's restart. So now we can do thin Notion API database, databases, retrieve database. And if I just give it silly values, it returns back an error, validation path failed. Should be a valid UID instead was 1-2. So we got a good error coming back. Let's actually put the ID to our, the true ID to our database that we want to grab. There we go. We got a database coming back. So we make it even easier now. Then a Notion API databases, retrieve a database, boom, we got a database. Now we're kind of snowballing here. So let's go ahead and just do list databases. So let's take this and list databases. This won't take any sort of IDs in, so it is just databases. So let's get rid of that. Let's not do this. But there is some options that could be passed in for our request. We do have query parameters. So there is the possibility of having query params come in. If there are none, we'll just say empty. And our get actually is already built in to expect query params. So let's try this again. So we have databases, and let's see about listing a database. It's not auto-completing. Wonder if it even knows it's there. Let's do empty. Okay, we might have to. Let's see. So R, then Notion databases. Okay. Let's see, listed. Oh, there it goes. It knows about it now. So let's do a bad input. And it's a bad input because it expected a map. Actually, let's just do empty input. List databases, and it gives us a list of the databases that our integration has access to. The integration only has access to one single database, so we only get one result. So we get an array list, we get a list, and there's only going to be one result in here, which is that one database I gave my integration permissions to. Awesome. All right, so we've met our goal for today, and that was to start porting over this logic that I've written in my string closed captioner application to fetch Notion data and start to bundle it together in a package that we're going to build out. And this package is called Thin Notion API, where all it's going to do is it's going to help fetch and fetch and hopefully post data to Notion without doing too much in between. It's just there to make it really easy to interface with the API. So that's what the goal is. And we've already met part of it. We've already created the retrieve database and the list database part. There is still some to-dos to do, and that is to make sure that we can accept get these query parameters to work. So we'll list this on the README the installation to do add description. To-dos. Let's see. So our to-dos are list database query param support. What else do we want to do? We want to be able to query database with options. Still need to support all page object actions, support all block actions, support all user actions, and support search. Also, need to start adding tests. Because that's the one thing we glossed over is need to start adding tests. So that's probably something we'll get started on the next stream. So we got the basic interface going. We got some data. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the code I wrote in the utils, hard coding this the secret key. And we're going to go ahead and get rid and just right now, because one thing you should do is when you're experimenting with stuff and, you know, playing with things, is make sure to delete your integrations that, you know, you might have leaked information for. So we'll have to delete this integration. Yeah, thanks for stopping by, everyone. Thank you, Lily, for hanging out. I love to catch up with you. I'll message you. Yeah. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. Hopefully you got something out of this, and I will hopefully see you all next time, where we'll continue working on this Notion package to make Notion integrations awesome in Elixir. So I will catch you next time. So have a great weekend. Go eat something yummy. Get your vaccine. And just have fun. All right, everyone. Bye.